These islands are called by Japan Senkaku and by China Diaoyu. They have been disputed for quite some time, even nowadays. China, Taiwan, and Japan are the ones involved in this conflict. The real owner of these islands is Japan, who claims to be the one to discover them in 1884. Why do they want these islands so much? Well, these inhabited islands are important for these countries because of the rich fishing grounds, oil and gas reserves that have been identified around this territory.
An uninhabited island located in the East China Sea had made relations with China and Japan for decades. But tensions have flashed numerous times over the Senkaku Islands, which China calls Diaoyu Island, including face-offs between Japanese and Chinese warplanes and ships. China claims that the island belonged to them in the 1400s, when it was used as a staging point for Chinese fishermen. Japan's argued that China had no trace of control in the 1885 survey, so it was recognized by Japan as a sovereign territory in 1895. Japan then sold the island in 1932 to descendants of the original settlers, but the factory failed around 1940 and the island were eventually deserted. The island were administered by the U.S. occupation force after the war, but in 1972, Washington returned them to Japan as part of its withdrawal from Okinawa. Since then, the U.S. has started ownership of the Senkaku Islands. It's a matter between China and Japan, but America wants good relations with both Japan and China. However, sometimes one needs to choose a side. The most recent act of tension was in 2012 when Japan nationalized the islands. Protesters hurled bottles at the Japanese embassy in Beijing, overturned Japanese cars, and ransacked Japanese stores and restaurants. In 2013, China declared a formal air defense identification zone covering airspace over the island and overlapping with airspace claimed by Japan. The ADIC declaration required airlines flying over the water to first notify China. The move prompted an outcry from Japan and the United States. The discovery of potential oil, natural gas, and methane hydrate deposits in the area has added impetus to the dispute, says Carl Schuster, a professor at Hawaii Pacific University and former director of operations at the U.S. Pacific Command's Joint Intelligence Center. The two sides did agree in 2008 to jointly develop the resources, but Japan has accused China of drilling. According to Asia Maritime Transparency Initiative, China has 12 operating drilling rings.
Now, with a little background, it is time to think about the factors that have caused this conflict and the effects that these have over those involved. To start with, the main reason for China, Japan, and Taiwan to be after the ownership of these islands is because they are rich in fishing grounds, oil, and gas reserves. Both China and Taiwan claim that the islands have been a part of Chinese territory since the 16th century. However, Japan claims that when they first discovered them, the islands were inhabited and showed no sign of Chinese occupation. In 1895, the islands were incorporated into Japanese territory by the name of Senkaku Islands. This happened after their victory in the First Sino-Japanese War. However, before 1971, neither China nor Taiwan made any claims to the territory of the islands, and neither government expressed any objection to Japanese sovereignty over the islands. China states that the Chinese first discovered and named the islands Diaoyu Dao. They say the islands have been part of their territory since ancient times, and they serve as really important fishing grounds which were administered by the province of Taiwan. China states that when Taiwan was returned in the Treaty of San Francisco, the islands should have returned too. It is also important to mention that in a separate way, Taiwan claims these islands also. This dispute is about more than just the national prize. It is not about land, but about resources. Ownership of the rocky archipelago will give access to rich areas of several resources, economic benefits, and strategic interests. This battle is about national status and influence since it affects in a global stage, not only in Asia.
According to this problematic, many solutions are possible to solve the conflict. First, this solution has been a major possibility to solve this dispute. According to Los Angeles Times, the simplest approach would be for each side to not object to others' claim of sovereignty and for both sides to forget any active use, administration, or oversight of the islands. In effect, the dispute will be frozen. This would allow time for the Japan China relationship to return to a calmer state, or perhaps for new ideas to emerge on how sovereignty can be shared more permanently by decoupling by the ownership issue from the economic rights around the islands. Anyways, the situation could be far erased. Another more binding solution is to approach would employ similar logic but seek a more lasting resolution. It would include 4 points. First, each side agrees not to challenge the right of the other to maintain its prospective claims to full sovereignty over all the islands. Second, China agrees to accept that Japan will continue legally to have the administrative rights over the islands, and this would be a concession by Beijing. Third, Japan accepts the use of the islands would be delegated to an oversight board with equal number of Japanese and Chinese members and a rotating chairman, making any decisions on use of the islands, such as visits by scientists or tourists, by consensus. Thus, in practical terms, it would share all administrative duties and rights with China. This would be a concession by Tokyo. And last, both sides agreed that they would not open up any territorial disputes with the other over any land formations anywhere in the Western Pacific. At the time, both islands were the only disputed territories involving China and Japan, and it is important that no new disputes surface down the road. Only a package deal such as the above can work, because it asks for flexibility from each key party simultaneously. Although there is not an official solution for this problem, there have been many attempts to try to solve it. The Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe said that they will raise their Coast Guard budget in order to have more surveillance in the islands. Japan is making this because China has been sending boats near the area and sometimes they have entered in Japanese territories. One example of this is that in summer of 2016, China sent hundreds of fishing and government boats near the islands. Nevertheless, China's President Xi Jinping said that the issue would be resolved through dialogue, but Japan thought that it could be resolved if China stopped sending boats near the islands.
Since this conflict takes place in a different country from ours, there are not a lot of things we can do in order to try to solve it, at least not directly. What can be done to contribute to the solution of this problem is inform other people. Therefore, the situation that is affecting these countries, China and Japan, will be known by more people, and maybe a person, a group, or an association with the necessary resources can do something to try to help these countries to solve the problem that they have. Talks can be given to raise awareness about why is it important to solve conflicts that are taking place in foreign countries and inform people about the possible consequences that can happen if the problem continues to grow and that can affect our country, regardless that this conflict is happening in a place that is not close to Mexico. As citizens, campaigns can be made to reunite people that also want to help to solve this type of conflicts, in order to make a change in the world and make it a better place.
Conclusion. Since the aggressive position on which China is can cause serious problems to Japan, Taiwan, and the United States, China feels the need to control the East and the South China Sea. So these islands are a crucial part to determine the maritime frontiers of China and Japan. And once China achieves to claim sovereignty over these islands, Japan will be in a risky condition. Besides losing an economically important area, rich in fish, oil, and natural resources, the construction of military bases will probably cause serious problems in the future. China could also block trade routes. The tension between Taiwan and China will probably cause problems too. Due to the proximity of these islands and Taiwan, China could take advantage of this location and try to invade Taiwan. Initially, Taiwan only wanted to keep their fishing rights in the waters of the island, but if China conquers these islands, Taiwan's safety will be in danger. As mentioned before in the text, China could block some trading routes if the islands get conquered, and this is not a convenient situation to the United States. Although the US does not take a side on the decision of which country should keep the islands, they will prefer that Japan keeps the islands because of the opportunities of the economy that these islands provide. In conclusion, China getting the islands could block the routes and end the domination of US in the Asia-Pacific region.
My opinion on this conflict is that sometimes countries do not respect the legal ownership of the lands, and instead they are blinded by money, power, and resources without taking into account the benefits of alliances in between countries. As a possible way I will contribute to these solutions will be to make people conscious about this problem. Since this is happening on the other side of the world, there really is much we can do from here except inform people and keep informating ourselves as well.
I believe this problem involves more than just the territory. We know both Japan and China are very proud countries, and neither will want to be claimed as a loser. Either way, China is bigger in size than Japan, so I don't really see the need of China taking that territory if in the first place it was part of Japan's territory. Nowadays, we live in a very selfish world where everyone just look out for money and nothing else, even the president. So I think that this problem should have easily ended if it wasn't for the sake of power and territory of China and respect for the Japanese territory. I could contribute by making a video about the topic and spread my idea of peace and make it viral so it involucrates people and make action.
My opinion over this conflict is that we live in a so-called modern society, and the fact that China and Japan are arguing over who controls those islands is a bit concerning and disappointing because they are both rich and powerful, so I believe they should put a better example to the rest of the world. Also, what I'm doing to contribute to this cause is to aware everyone around me about it because I think knowledge is power. So I believe if we know what is happening around the world and around us, we can better our society.
I think that these conflicts can be solved in a pacific way instead of appealing to more aggressive solutions. The tension between the countries can lead to a major problem that could affect the nearby countries or the whole world. Instead of risking to cause something like this, they can discuss these problems and make an agreement or a treaty that will beneficiate both sides equally. The world needs more peace rather than violence. Nowadays, we are a more comprehensive and educated society, and we should learn from the mistakes made in the past in order to prevent a bigger conflict. I could contribute to the solution of this problem by making conscious of the people that I know about the consequences that might happen all over the world if this conflict grows, and encourage them to spread the word and to make something that could solve this problem.
I think this type of conflicts affect not just one country but all the involved ones. It's not about who owns or wins the territory, but about what they are risking while fighting for it. They're putting their reputation on the table and also their own territory because if they want to start a war, it will affect both countries. So I believe they should find a more pacific and peaceful way to earn or distribute this territory. What I would do to try to help on not only this conflict but all of them going on around the world right now will be informed about these problems to everyone I can reach. So this way people will have the knowledge and now they can decide what to do with it and how to behave. Also, trying to make people realize that violence is never the way and peace is the road to happiness.
My opinion about the conflicts in general between Japan and China is that whatever territory they are fighting for, it's better to make a treaty and peacefully both nations could reach an agreement. I could contribute by making other people conscious about the problem and that the best way to solve it is without violence, but with peace and respect it deserves to get a better communication and it might not be something great, but it could help.